So as you can see here, define Python. Python is a multi-purpose language with a simple and beginner-friendly syntax. Very easy. Learning Python is very simple because the only reason behind it is we need not write code for each and every feature. Actually, there are so many built-in libraries and tools and functions, modules, etc. We can directly start using them. So that is one of the reasons why Python got this much popular among the people. Okay, we need not suppose take some small issue. Suppose I am looking searching for a set of items out of in a particular group of items. I am looking for some particular element in the list or some in array or something. So in other languages like Java, I need to write a lot of code to do that simple task itself. I need to write a lot of code, but here in Python I can very simply solve that. So for example, here if I consider the same example, like if we have some operator called in operator, with that in a single line I can write successfully a search program. I need that like tons of code, etc. So that's why Python has got this much popular. So the thing is, why Python? I have other languages, no, like Java is there, C hash, etc. Like JavaScript is there. Generally, there is a false notion among people. Why Java is popular means because this is the latest technology. That's why people are starting using it, etc. But that's not true. Python is not the new technology. It was invented in 1989 itself. That means well before Java has developed. So we have Python in the market already. So that is not the reason. Like means being the latest technology is not the reason for its popularity. Okay, so if you compare that, I think Java, if I'm not wrong, JavaScript was introduced in 92, whereas in Python was developed in like 89 itself. Okay, so that means Python is the oldest language compared to JavaScript itself. But still, why Python is popular is not because of its because of the reason like it is being the latest technology or not. That's not the proper reason. Okay, so because of its features, it's got more familiarity. And coming to history, let us start with the history of Python. Why the name Python? Is there any abbreviation before it, behind it? Why name? Why the name Python? Actually, there is no abbreviation or logic behind the name Python. As you can see here, Python is developed by Guido van Rossum. He is the developer of this language. In 89, the complete version of Python was released in 1989. Guido van Rossum is the developer of this language. So why he named his language as Python means he used to watch a comedy circus troupe in his country. Like the name of the troupe was Monty Python. It was a comedy troupe actually in a circus. He used to watch their programs. He used to like that, and he simply named his language as Python. And as people got attracted to it, he's continued the same name. There is no logic behind it, or there is no abbreviation. And as you can see here, Python is a general purpose language. General purpose in the sense it is suitable for all types of applications. In the coming next 5 minutes, will discuss. We'll have a discussion in which sort of applications can I use Python and all. So there are we can categorize languages into two types: general purpose languages and special purpose. Special purpose languages we have long before C language was developed, we had Fortran, we have COBOL. COBOL is for business. COBOL is meant for designing business applications. Fortran for scientific applications, etc. They are called special purpose languages. That means using COBOL, I can't develop an web application, or using COBOL, I can't develop something related to banking domain or insurance domain, etc. Because that is a special purpose language intended only for business applications and all. Similarly, Fortran for scientific applications. It is not suitable for every application. Suppose if I have the knowledge of Fortran, I am unable to develop any kind of application. So they are special purpose, and that is not preferable. No, having the knowledge of Fortran is not sufficient for me to develop any kind of application. So with the advent of C language, they started the era of general purpose languages. As the name itself indicates, general purpose in the sense they are suited for all kind of developing all kinds of applications. Just from C onwards, the area started for general purpose applications. So Python is one of them, and it is interpreted, not compiled. Okay, so when you enter into the technicalities, I'll let you know what is the advantages between of interpreted languages when compared to compiled languages and all. there are a few advantages and few drawbacks also. We'll discuss all these things when we enter into the technicalities. And then it supports object oriented concepts as well. So it doesn't mean being Python being in procedural language doesn't mean it won't support object oriented concept. It supports both. Okay. And then obviously it's a high level language. I need not worry about the low level details like memory management, disk management, etc. I can, being a high level programmer, I can concentrate on my core concepts, core whatever is the core requirement, I can concentrate on that instead of worrying about the memory managements and whatever the low level details are required for a particular application to run. I need not bother about all those things. Okay. So, and it was derived. So Python has got inspiration from many other languages. As you can see here, we can find some of the features of C language, C++, Smalltalk, shell scripting, etc. So when we enter into the practicalities, we'll discuss all those things. Okay. And then who can use Python? Who are the target audience? So there are no particular field that in where I cannot use Python. We can use Python everywhere. So even as you can see here in the list, even kids can also use Python. So as usual, software engineers who are intended to develop software applications, so they have to use Python anyway. Data analysts, mathematicians, scientists, accountants, and even network engineers, all of them can use Python. So we need not be a great software engineer to to use Python. I can use Python for smaller, simpler tasks also, for regular activities. Suppose I need to I am an accountant where I am just using spreadsheets like Excel for my daily regular activities. So I can write a simple Python script instead of doing that manually, opening the spreadsheet manually, entering the data records or data into it manually and all. I can write a simple automation program which makes the whatever the daily day-to-day activities are there, we can automate it. So I need not be a great software engineer or mathematician to use Python. From complex applications to day-to-day regular activities, I can start using Python. Okay. The thing is now, why Python is famous, so much I have so many other languages now, like C hash, JavaScript and all. Coming to the market also, as per some research in the 2019, which was done in 2019, Python has occupied the first place in market when compared to later behind Java and then JavaScript. Next comes C hash. So Python has got this much of popularity as per a research in that was done in 2009. As per August 2019, this was the latest research done. Okay, why this much famous? Why Python is so much famous? As discussed, the first and foremost point is easy. It's easy to learn. So it can be used to solve complex problems with fewer lines of code. I need not write, as we discussed in the introduction itself, I said, like for a simple example I took. Suppose I am writing to a script to search a few, but I have got a group of elements. I just want to search for a few, one or two elements into the list, out of the list. So I need not write bigger complex algorithms for it. Okay. So I can just use a simple operator called in operator. So just like in operator and all, we have got so many built-in modules and functions. We need to not write code for everything. That's why I said the only prerequisite here is just the time. We don't need any programming experience here. Okay. And it can be used almost everywhere. Like see where so the knowledge so upon learning this course, after the completion of your course, so what you can opt for, so it can be used, Python can be used for in so if you want to learn design a web application or something, if you want to go for web development and all, so maybe Django, Flask, so many other frameworks are there available. But to learn Django, this whatever the knowledge we need, the prerequisite is Python scripting. So if you don't have this knowledge, I cannot go for Django directly. So whatever the course curriculum we now have, so is helpful for us to learn Django also, and then Pygame. Pygame is an module we use to develop games, actually for game development, and it acts as a foundation. It's a prerequisite for big data analysis and visualization. And then for automation, I can use, obviously for automation we can use Python. And then web testing, artificial intelligence, and data science. So we can use this for developing applications for your smartphones or desktop, and even for web applications also. And then software testing. So I have dealt with so many people who are working in testing domain. So they want from manual testing, they want to shift their career from manual testing to automation. So for them also this will be helpful. And then even for hacking, so the knowledge of Python helps us. So this is we can consider this as a prerequisite if you want to go like for any of these applications in future. This acts so in like I can say Python can be used everywhere, anywhere. Okay. And most of the whatever the main important web applications are, like YouTube or Google or Dropbox. Okay, they are also implemented, the code was written using Python only. So you know how popular YouTube is, or how popular Google is, and Dropbox. Okay, most of the code was written in Python only. And there was a very famous like website, you must have heard of it, Reddit. The code of Reddit was totally written in Python only. Okay. And if you want the, like, you can find it free, like we can download it, download Python from any browser. You can just type it here, just and the current version will be Python 3.x. So I can say Python download. We don't need to get the exact URL also. You can simply say Python download for Windows or for Mac or for Unix and all. So it's better to download from the authorized sources. So I can download it free from python.org somewhere else. The current version will be 3, but 2.x is also currently in use in the market. Okay, so we need to learn 2.x also, because it's not backward compatible. Generally, if you are seeing any versions of any, like Windows, say Windows some 3.x or Windows 98 2000, we can say them are Java, consider Java 6 or Java 9, whatever. They're backward compatible with the previous versions. We just find few additions only. They're not totally different, but here there are a lot of difference are there between Python's 2.x and Python 3. So currently 2.x is also in market. Some of the applications are still written in 2.x only. So it's better to learn the latest version, no? So currently, so in our curriculum, we are going to discuss 3.7 only, the current version of Python, which is the current version, that is 3.7 only. So now let us discuss about the job opportunities. Like once after the completion of this course, how will be the job opportunities? First of all, let us discuss about the responsibilities of being a Java developer. Okay, if you are a certified Java developer, what are your responsibilities? Definitely, we need to develop software applications. Okay, being a Java developer, we need to develop Java software applications using Python. Also, we need to write code for backend components. Okay, whatever the backend business logic is there, the business logic that was written in backend has to be written in Python only. There is no other if you are a Python developer. Okay, in front end and all will be taken care with like JavaScript or HTML, etc. And then one more responsibility of a Python developer is we need to test and debug our programs. Okay, and as well as we need to create new applications. We need to create new applications that have to be integrated with the existing ones. That means if a script is already existing, maybe I need to, depending on the business changes in the business, I need to update it. I need to make some modifications. I need to edit the existing script. These are all the responsibilities. Okay. So as we discussed now, Java falls first among the other competitors like Java or C hash. So the currently job opportunities for a Java developer is like the boom is like anything, especially in California and in India. If you consider, the market is more of a Gurgaon actually. So it's a like the need of the market, we can say. Being the knowledge, having the knowledge of Java is the boom of the market. Now, just we'll also have a focus on the skill set. See, we need, if you want to get more pay as a Java developer, it's better. It depends depends on the location, obviously, location as well as the experience and also the skill set. So if you have the following skill sets along with Python, if you have the following skill sets, okay, you will get paid more, even more. Say the thing, AWS comes first actually. Means having the knowledge of Python scripting along with AWS. Then Django. Then some APIs, application programming interfaces, or some like Docker. DevOps applications are there, no? DevOps tools. Docker comes first in the list. And then Linux. Then cloud computing. And machine learning, having the knowledge of machine learning along with Python scripting, then JavaScript, and then even Java also. If you have all these skill sets along with the knowledge of Python, you can get more, you can get paid more. Yeah, obviously it depends on other factors also, like the location as well as your experience. Along with that, the skill sets also matter a lot. Okay, so minimum to minimum, like if you are a fresher having a Python experience, Python like programming knowledge, minimum we can earn 50,000, that's for sure, per month. That is the minimum, and maximum depends on your experience and skill sets. Now let us enter into the technicalities. I'll show you the curriculum first, what we are going to discuss in this session. Okay. So
yes, yes. Click on curriculum. You'll find that. Yeah, below.
no, this is not mine actually. I think this is someone else's. Is it mine?
Can you scroll down a bit?
Yeah. Yeah, this is mine. Yeah. So these are the course contents actually that we are going to learn in this session. So as you can see here, I have separated the content into several modules. So first module covers all the introduction part about the history, the features, why Python is this much popular, different Python environment, how can we download Python, and various environments or various IDEs that I can use for Python and all. Okay, so what is an IDE? Integrated development environment. That means the place where I can edit or create scripts, where I can run, debug, test, and etc. We have got so many editors available. We'll have a discussion on all those things, and then I'll start with the very basics, starting with the very basic scripts, sample scripts, and all. We'll enter into the intermediate level and then advanced level of concepts. So what is the basics script? We can run Python scripts in two modes actually: interactive mode, that is for one-time usage. If you just want to execute a particular command for one time, single time, I can run this command at the interpreter actually. That is called interpreter mode. And then the scripting mode, where we are going to create a file with .py extension. All Python files will have .py extension, and we are going to write all the Python code inside a script so that I can use it regularly. So this mode is mainly used for automation actually. And then what is the difference between running Python scripts under Windows and Linux? Mostly 95% of the code don't need any changes. Suppose I have written a Python script under Windows. The same script I can run it across other platforms also, like it could be Mac, or it could be Linux, or it could be any other flavor of Unix. So 95% of the cases don't need any changes. Okay, only the big changes that are expected is the path changes. Anyway, right? Path representing the paths, the file names, and all are different in different environments. So we'll discuss all those things. What are the differences? How can I run a script under Linux, and how can I run a script under Windows, etc. And then from here onwards, we are entering into the actual practicalities, like Python. What are the identifiers, variables, functions, etc. The reserve words, the variables in Python. There are two category of variables. So there are scalars and sequences. So we'll discuss what are they, and so what are the purpose and what are the differences. Then how to make Python scripts readable. This is one of the advantages that we don't find in any other language. Okay, Python scripts are readable. So readability means upon observing the script itself, I can understand the flow, flow of control actually. Okay, so we'll discuss in detail when we enter in the actual practicals. So upon observing the script itself, I can observe the flow. Okay, so whereas it would be messy in other languages, because this feature is not adapted by any language, any other language. So whether the script is readable or not in other languages, it completely depends on the programmer. Okay, depending on his habits, programming habits, and if he leaves as many white spaces as possible, definitely the program will look great, or it will look readable. But it's not optional there. So it all depends on his habit. But here it's not optional. In Python, it is compulsory. Definitely, we need to leave so many spaces and indents depending on the code we are writing. Okay, so for sure, the Python scripts have to look readable, so anybody can understand what is happening in the script. Even if you are not the developer of the script, anybody can go through the script and they can understand what's happening and all. And then there we have a concept called multi-lines. How to split my code. Suppose if I have a long length of a code, actually very big code, instead of writing the code from left to right in a single line, I can split it across several lines. Again, this also can come under readability. Okay, so that means whatever the statement I can write in a single physical line, I can split it across several physical lines. Physically, they may extend for so many lines, but logically they are considered as a single line only. So please don't worry about all these things. I was just trying to explain the curriculum. Okay, we'll have a detailed discussion on all these concepts when the actual session starts and all. Okay, then quotes in Python. Generally in other languages, no, we are used to get two types of quotes: single quote and double quotes. We'll discuss what are the differences between single and double quotes, and here also we have the same quotes, single and double quotes as well. Along with that, we have triple quotes also here. Like triple quotes you won't find anywhere else in any other language. That is again the unique concept that we can find in Python. We'll discuss, okay, how to write comments, how to get user input. Okay, so then command line arguments, the most important concept, command line arguments. Then the Python variable types, how many types of variables are there. Okay, then the data types, some built-in functions. As we discussed, no, Python has got a huge repository of functions and libraries. So we keep on discussing so many functions built in. So many inbuilt functions are there, and we can write our own functions also as per my business requirement. Then the operators, it has got a rich set of operators. And if you have any knowledge about C or like Java, it will be even easier for you to learn operators, because most of them are carried from C language only. Or else, no problem, we even if you don't have any like prior experience also, we'll start from the scratch itself. Some of the operators are adapted directly from C language, and few are added here newly. Like what were added here are membership operators, identity, and string operators. These are not existing in C language. Then the string operations. So whatever the operations that is, strings here have got a simple structure. We need not worry more. We need not struggle more here to work with strings and all. It's very simple. So whatever the functions, how can I get I can access the some slices or some substrings of a particular string, of a huge string and all, and the functions that can apply on the strings and all we'll discuss. And then coming here, the flow control. Okay, so if statements, like branching statements, decision making statements, and then the loops and all, what are the different kinds of branching statements available here, etc., we'll discuss. And then the most important topics, so sequences. Here we have three kinds of sequences: list, tuples, dictionaries, and as well as sets is another concept. We will have a discussion with this. What are all the differences between all these types of sequences? Okay, the syntaxes, the functions that can be applied, the advantages of one sequence over other, all this comes into this module. And then nested sequences. Okay, having one sequence within another, having one list within another, or having a dictionary in a list, having a dictionary within another dictionary. All these they just like look like magic actually. Very interesting. We'll have a discussion on all these things. And then functions, as discussed now, Python has got a huge repository of built-in libraries, as well as we can write our own if something is not present already as per my business logic. Okay, I can't expect everything to be automated, no? So I need to write, I need to develop a few functions by myself, so I can write here. This module discusses about how to write user defined functions and all the supporting concepts that are needed for it. How, what is calling a function, the types of functions arguments. See, this was asked repetitively in interviews. The function arguments, types of function arguments, repetitively they are asking. And then this one also, lambdas or lambda functions are anonymous functions. So there will be no interview without this question, lambdas. Okay, and then the global keyword, very interesting, very important too. Okay, so these are all the supporting concepts that are required whenever you are going to develop a function. Okay, and this is about modules. The very important, very important. What is a module in Python? Just like if you have knowledge of C, you must have seen there hash includes some stdio.h and all. So what is that stdio.h? It's a built-in library where a lot of functions were defined. We call it here as a module. Okay, in Java or some other languages, we call them as libraries. Here we call them as modules. And it is very important and very easy also. The easiest chapter we have, and very important also. So how to create, how to build module, how to use the existing module. So this is importing, the most important concept, how to import an existing module into our script. All these concepts are covered here. And then file management. Okay, so I can create my own files, right? Append data into it. Suppose I'm working on some banking domain. Okay, I need to enter the details of all the customers. So we can create a file and keep on adding data into the um, whatever the developed file or the created file, or I can access the existing records. I can update few the details of few members. I can delete. Suppose if a customer has has left our bank, then I can just delete his details, or we can update it. But it is not much easier here in Python because we don't have any built-in features which allow me to edit or delete or update. We need to follow some that I can say we have a this is a flaw here in Python, because in Java we have special functions that help us to insert a few records or edit the existing data or deleting the data, etc. We can do there, but here that is not editing is not possible here. But we have to find an alternate way of editing files in Python. There is an alternate way. Okay, we'll discuss that also. And how can I work with directories as well? Random access files. Okay, there are two categories of files: sequential files and random access files. How to access data randomly, how to work with directories, how to create subdirectories. They and all are covered here. And then exception handling. So what is an exception? Exception is an runtime error. So there are two categories of errors, no? Compile time errors or syntax errors. So what is a syntax error? Suppose I have opened the quote and I haven't closed it. That comes under syntax error. Or opened the bracket and I haven't closed it. Or I have written something in uppercase which is supposed to be written in lowercase. Okay, I have changed the case of some keyword. or I have used a variable which was not existing. All these errors are called syntax errors. Okay, they are easy to find out. Generally people think like syntax, if I clear the syntax errors, my program is successful. No, syntax errors are very easy to clear because our interpreter itself displays all the errors with exact line numbers also, and the reason for raising that error also. The reason and the line number in which the particular error is occurring, that is all shown by the interpreter itself. So it's easy for us to correct. Okay, and we should not feel like if my program doesn't have any syntax errors, it is going to be successful. There could be another sort of errors that are called logical errors. Okay, so this comes under that category only. Python exception comes into that category only. These are called runtime errors. When the program started execution, depending on the input provided by the user, if the input is not suitable for my script, program doesn't understand, or the script doesn't understand how to behave and simply throws errors. Suppose I'm expecting, and suppose consider a small example, I'm adding two numbers, for example, adding two numbers. So you are expected to give either integers or floats, but user knowingly or unknowingly he has provided string data, two string values to add. So what happens? Program doesn't know, my script doesn't know how to add one integer and one string, or both strings, etc., because that data is not suitable for my program. Okay, so which cannot be identified at the time of development itself. No? While writing the script itself, how can I like how can I know the user is going to give me string data or something? Okay, so definitely the script is going to end abruptly with errors, but that is not the proper way of ending a program. I'm not asking, see, exception handling is not about hiding errors. We are not hiding errors. Definitely we'll highlight the errors, but in a neat manner. We are not going to throw errors, and the program is not going to get ended abruptly and all. We are just presenting the message like what went wrong and all in a neat manner, and the program is ready to continue also. So I'll explain a simple example. I will consider a simple example here. Suppose I went to some ATM machine. Okay, and I'm after swiping the card and all, you are supposed to enter a pin number. You entered a wrong pin number. What happens? Is it going to raise errors and getting stuck, the program ending abruptly? It's not going to happen, no? So it is showing me the neat message like, yeah, you entered a wrong pin number, and program is available, it is running. That's not the error. See, displaying the message that you entered a wrong pin number is not an error. That is also the output produced by the script. Okay, that is also one of the outputs. Why I got output means you entered a wrong pin number. If I had entered a proper pin number, I would have got the menu and all. Okay, the flow was changed now depending on my input. Okay, so there also we are not hiding errors. We are just displaying them, but handling decently. I'm handling those errors in a decent manner actually. So it's a very important topic, and all the supporting concepts that are necessary for exception handling are discussed here. We need to depend on few keywords like except, try, finally classes, etc. And there are so many built-in classes that we discuss here. Predefined exceptions hierarchy. So many built-in classes are there. So please don't worry about what is a class and all. If you have no knowledge on programming, I'll take care. Okay. So there is a hierarchy of built-in classes on whom I can depend to handle my exceptions. And in spite of, in addition to the like a built-in class hierarchy, we can create our own user defined exceptions also, because everything is not available inbuilt. No, say suppose for example, I'll explain you an example. I'm trying to divide a number with 0. Okay, I have written a small script. I'm writing a small script, c equal to say some a by b, but I entered the input a is 10 and b is 2. Now my program goes well because I can divide 10 with 2. There is nothing wrong in it. But what if user enters the denominator as 0? The numerator is 10 and the denominator is 0. Can we divide a number with 0? No, I cannot. We cannot divide a number with 0, right? Then my program ends abruptly. So because it's an universally known fact that when you try to divide a number with 0, it's an error. That is an universally known fact. We have a built-in class available for it. say that is called zero division error exception. There is a built-in class and I need not define that class for to handle my exception. I can depend on that class. Now consider one more business requirement. I'm asking the user to provide some string data where I don't want any characters called yes in my input. I don't want any letter called yes in my input. Maybe out of some requirement, my script demands that. Is it wrong to have, or is it a sin to have a character called s in the string? No, right? From Python's point of view, it's not a sin to have a character called s or to have a character called a in the input. So it cannot handle. It don't have any built-in inbuilt exception to handle this situation. Okay, as I am doing this because of my business requirement, I have to design my own class. Okay, so there comes the requirement for this feature called user-defined exceptions. Okay, so very interesting chapter and important also. And then I can say the toughest chapter here. So don't feel like this is the toughest, but compared to other topics, in Python, the only typical chapter we have, the only typical module we have is this one, Python regular expressions. Okay, here we have got a lot of symbols. And so what is a regular expression? For example, suppose I have a database of few employees in my file or in some database like Oracle or MySQL. See, suppose using Python, I can connect to database as well. That we are going to learn in in the as in the upcoming modules and all. How to connect to the backend database if it is Oracle or if it is MySQL, etc. We'll discuss all those things. Suppose I have a repository of employee records. Out of those many lakhs of records, I don't want the details of everyone. Suppose I just want the details of, say, some employee called John. Okay, so here I know exactly for whom I am looking for, whose details I am looking for. Maybe I am looking for John, so that's pretty clear. What if I want the details of every employee whose name begins with S? So can I provide the list of all names whose name begins with S? The list is infinite, right? Even if I provide a list of 1 lakh names, still the count can increase. I cannot say this is the final list. Okay, so try to explore the names beginning with S. The list is endless. So in such cases, it's tedious to develop a list, actually, list of all names, because I'm not clear about what I'm looking for here. I just what I got here is a pattern. It's not a string. It is not a literal string. Okay, it is a pattern. What is the pattern here? The list of all employees beginning with whose name begins with yes. Yeah, so here in such cases I need to depend on, I cannot write, say, some Sam or some Sunny or some Smith. How can I write the complete list? Okay, so here I need to depend on the concept called regular expressions, which offers us lot of symbols. Okay, depending on the concept and all, it's very interesting. And see, I'm not saying this is the toughest thing, but compared to other chapters, modules we discuss, no, from the beginning onwards we keep on saying Python is easy to learn and all. So compared to other modules, this is somewhat typical, actually. Okay, but don't worry, I'll take care. So I'll first explain you the various kinds of symbols offered here, which help us to write different regular expressions. And we have some built-in modules also here for searching substitutions and all. Suppose I want to replace by mistake while entering the name I entered as Smith instead of Sunny. It was at some typo error. So I can substitute. I can make some editing also here. We'll discuss all those things. And then after the regular expressions, here comes the built-in modules. So whatever the built-in libraries that are available for us that help us for code development, we can discuss few of them here. We are discussing. Apart from that, see, we in the above set of modules, we discuss file IO, no? So, and also when working with strings. So in order to perform some string operations also, we need to take the help of some built-in modules and all. Apart from those modules, we have these extra date and time modules, random function modules, mathematical module, OS module, NumPy module. This NumPy actually, this is covered if you are opting for data science. If in future, if you are looking for data science course or something, in that curriculum, you have to learn this one, NumPy symbol. But as I found it is important and all, I have added this here, NumPy module. Similarly, sub-process, so many important modules are there. We learn them, the methods that are existing, the attributes that are present in the module, we learn one by one. And here comes the object-oriented programming concepts. Okay, so Python not only supports procedural language concepts, it also supports OOPS concepts as well. But believe me, this is the simplest way of learning object-oriented programming. So if you are used to Java or C++, you will now understand how easy to create all those or to implement all those concepts in Python. So if you are directly hitting Python, you may not know the advantage. Okay, but if you have already created classes and polymorphism and okay, inheritances, etc. in Java and all, you will now enjoy implementing all those concepts here, because it's very simple, very simple. But Python is not pure object oriented. Because see, object oriented programming means it is not related to any particular language. It is a set of rules. Actually, it is a set of rules. Any language which implements those concepts is called as an object oriented programming language. If any particular language implements everything, we call it as a pure object oriented. But here in Python, we can't implement few OOPS concept features. Okay, so that's why we just have to call it as an object oriented. It's not pure object oriented. So what we cannot implement here and all, what are the features that are supported here, we have a look at all those things. And then the multi-threading, especially when you're working in the client server technology. So this concept is important. How to, what is a thread? Do you have any idea? So for that, we need to have the knowledge about program, process, and then thread, and then comes thread. So actually, when you're working in networking, like when you are deploying the script in a client server architecture, this knowledge is important. Otherwise, if you're running the script in a local machine, this is not required. Threads and all are not required. So what is a program? So program is nothing but, as you know, it's a set of instructions written in some particular language. Okay, the program has to follow the syntaxes and the grammar of that particular language. Okay, and it is stored on the disk. Okay, it is stored on the disk only, physically. Whereas process, what is a process? The same program, if it is running currently, we can call it as a process. Say suppose I have lot of programs in my disk here. I have Word, MS Word, I have Java, I have PyScript, I have PyCharm. They're all called programs only, that's it, because they're not currently running. They're merely just stored on the disk. But whatever the programs that are currently being in use, being active, they are called as processes. So out of the so many number of programs that are available in my current machine, only as I have opened this PowerPoint here, we can call it now as PowerPoint process. And then this Spider, I opened that Spider editor to give some demonstration and all. And then yeah, go to meeting, some browser. These are all called processes because they are the same programs currently running are called processes. Now what is a thread? If the same process we are running in a multi user environment, so many people are using the same process at the same time. Consider an example where I am going to book tickets for traveling. Okay, say Redbus. Okay, suppose I am using the program now. It's the same process, I'm using it now. So not only me, some lakhs of other people will connect to the same process at the same time as it of me. When I was trying to connect to that particular web server and all, maybe along with me, lots of other people, maybe the count could be thousands or lakhs. They are trying to access the same application. Okay, then how is it possible? There is only one program. See, Redbus cannot develop lakhs of programs for each and every user independently. Okay, so there is only one program and there is only one process that is running. But how these lakhs of people are using the same process at the same time? Because they won't create multiple processes, but they will create multiple threads. Okay, so that helps us to access the same program in parallel to other clients also. Okay, this is the basic concept, this is the basic knowledge. Okay, and we'll discuss here how to implement multi-thread. See, multi-threading is not new here, it is there in Java also. Okay, then the same things we can implement here. We'll discuss what's the use and how to implement all those things in Python. Okay, then comes the database connectivity. Suppose I have a database in background like Oracle or MySQL. Okay, how can I connect with Python? Okay, I can access via a Python script. Using a Python script, I can connect to the database that is existing in background. And as usual, once after connecting, I can perform all the transactions, getting the data, inserting records into it, transactions management, executing whatever the queries, selecting few records. We can do everything here. And then Excel processing. Sometimes you can you can get the input from external source, maybe from some third party in the form of an Excel workbook, Excel sheet. Okay, the data comes from, say, some my HR team. The data comes as a in the form of an Excel sheet. Now I have to make my Python script access that worksheet. My Python script has to get input from the, I need not manually enter all those, I need not manually process. So because we are looking for my automation, no, what is the use of learning Python then? Still you are doing things manually. Okay, there comes the need for automation. Whatever the file it may come, how many ever the cells cells are filled with data, the data and all have to be processed with a single Python script. For that, we need these modules, XLRT, XLRD, and XLWT modules. XLWT for Excel write, means you can create new worksheets and new workbooks here. Well, XLRD is for reading. Reading means already there is a workbook and there is a worksheet and data filled with data. I can make my Python script read the data present there. This is also a very beautiful module actually. So this is the complete Python scripting curriculum. The knowledge of which is compulsory if you are in future trying to upgrade your skills also, like Django or big data and machine learning, okay, and DevOps. So the knowledge of all this is whatever the curriculum we have shown you, this is more than enough, okay, to improve your skill sets in future, as well as you can start your curriculum as a pure Python developer also as well. And already we discussed now, if you have these extra skill sets along with Python, okay, like Unix, Unix or cloud AWS or DevOps, Django, you will get you can get more pay actually. So is it okay? How is the flow going? I was just giving you a glance.
Yeah, it's
just
very
I was
comprehensive and thorough.
just giving a glance of so don't worry, I haven't explained anything in this class, just I have given you a glance of the concepts, that's it. So I can say the abstract view. Okay, we haven't entered into the details yet. I have not started even I just wanted you to show you a few technicalities and few scripts and all, but okay. So, and one more thing, you need to install how to set up the Python environment. You need to download Python as I have shown here. You can open, you need not know the sources exact, so URLs and all. Just go to the Google and just type there like Python for Windows or whatever. Okay, Python download for Windows or for Mac or for some Linux, depending on the flavor you are using. And you can get the link, we can download it freely. And one more thing, having Python is not enough. Sometimes you may need some editors also, some IDEs also. So there are also plenty of IDs available here. So I prefer using the Spider, Anaconda, no? Anaconda package is there. In that we'll get lot of tools, Spider, Jupyter. I prefer using Spider because installing and downloading some advanced modules will become easy for me here. Or else you can use PyScripter. There are a lot of more. You can freely download them. PyScripter, then PyCharm, and you can use even a Notepad also. Notepad or Notepad++ also can use, but you won't find because that's not a special editor for Python. No, you won't get help and all over there. See here, I have Spider, and the current version, latest version is 3.7. I can get help here over Python. This is a special intended editor for Python. Okay, but if I am doing the same task I'm writing in Notepad, it won't provide me any help. So it depends on your convenience. PyCharm or Atom. Atom you can use. Sublime is there, no? Sublime editor you can use. I think there is something called IDE that also you can use. So a lot of editors are there. You can, it's your wish which one you prefer. So there will be no difference depending on the coding or something. And if you are running it under Unix, obviously no other chance now. We have to depend on VI editor only. I'll show you the data how to run Python scripts under Linux and all. We need not change the code even if you are running that on Mac or some in Linux also. You need not change the code. The only difference is how we are creating scripts. Here it is different because I have got a GUI interface. So creating a new script or importing a module or running the script becomes easy for me because everything is graphical here. But if I have to do the same thing in Linux, I need to remember commands. Okay, because everything is command based now there. That's the only difference. And one more difference we find here, there are the paths related to paths. So here in Windows, if you are developing, the path goes on like this, no, C slash something slash, okay, something slash like this. Whereas in Linux, we will have root, then home directories, some D1, D2, etc. Okay, only the path differences will come. Otherwise, script wise or the technicalities wise, there is no difference. The coding wise. Yeah. So this is just a glance. I just wanted you to execute one or few scripts, but Satish, can I continue for 5-10 minutes more? Wanted
This
to give you
conference will now be recorded.
yeah. I just want to introduce the basic things, very basic things. Here, I want to show you the print function. If you want to print something onto the screen, we have a built-in function called print available. Print space within brackets. I need to give the string that I want to print. Welcome to some Python programming, etc. Here we find a difference between Python version 3 and 2. In Python, if you are using some 2.x, the syntax would be like this. Welcome to Python. Just a space is required. Those brackets are not required there if you are using 2.x. But here it leads to syntax error. See here, I am getting here. I need not like run the script to get my syntax errors. Here itself, it is an indication. There is some red cross mark is available there. No, that is an indication that something went wrong here. So this is these sort of differences you need to understand. Why I am comparing always with Python 2.x and Python 3 means because 2.x is currently in market. Okay, if it is totally not in use, then I can leave 2.x. Okay, and I can explain you the features of 3 only directly. But 2.x, most of the scripts that are running in market currently are developed in 2.x only. So if you just got appointed as a Python developer and you need to work on the scripts developed under 2.x, so you should know, right? You should have knowledge. What are the differences between 2.x? But because as I'm giving you the 3.x knowledge, and you need to work on 2.x, that leads to some inconvenience because a lot of differences are there. As I said, no, it's not backward compatible. Python 3.x is not backward compatible with 2.x. Lot of differences are there. So that's why. Okay. So if you are using 2.x, the space is enough. No need of those brackets. But you are going for 3, definitely brackets are compulsory. And as it is a string, okay, I have kept it in single double quotes. So you can keep the same string in single quote as well. It won't make any difference if I am keeping the quotes in single quote or double quotes. Okay, I am running the script. I don't know if I'll close the screen, I'll be out of the meeting actually. Can I move it? Yeah. Okay, so this is my, see, this is the spider window. The same other windows, other editors also look like more or less the same only. No need to worry about it. So once I have written the program, it is in high level language. Okay, so I didn't get any result. Why? Because the machine can understand only binary code. So zeros and ones. It can understand only zeros and ones. If I have written the, see, suppose we all four of you and myself, we are conversing with, having a conversation with each other. So suppose I speak Hindi, but you don't know Hindi. Okay, then how can we manage to have a conversation? It's not possible, right? So there comes a mediator in between. Who knows? Who acts as a translator between both of us. Okay, so here also it's tough for me. Actually, the language understandable by the machine is zeros and ones only. Everything, the code completely has to be written in zeros and ones. But it's very tough to learn. How can I manage things? How can I write the code completely in zeros and ones? Learning itself is difficult. Okay, it will be difficult to understand and all. So that's why, to make the programmers like to learn things easily and all, for the sake of programmers, these high-level languages were developed. High-level languages are looking like this. Some commonly used English words, mathematical symbols we use. They're easy for the programmer to understand. But the computer cannot give me results. See, I have written 2 instructions there, but I'm not getting any result. Why? Because it won't understand what is print and what is that welcome and all. So now there is a need for the translator who will convert the instructions written in high-level language into the format understandable by the machine, that is zeros and ones. Here we have actually 2 types of translators are available. One is the compiler and the second one is the interpreter. The purpose of both are same only. That means both are intended to convert a high-level language program into zeros and ones. But what is the difference is the way they work is different. So how compiler works? Suppose I have a set of 10 instructions in my program. How compiler work means it will try to convert all the instructions as a whole. After the program is totally ready, okay, then in a single turn, it will convert all those instructions into zeros and ones. All those instructions into zeros and ones. And then if there are no syntax errors, it will try to execute the program and give the results. That's how compilers work. That means out of the so many instructions written, I have an error in the 5th instruction as well. For example, consider there is an error, syntax error in the 5th instruction. I can't even enjoy the result of all the 4 instructions. See, they are error proof. Totally they are error proof. But still, I can't enjoy the result of this above 4 instructions where there are no errors. Because a single line has got an error. That's why, because we are using compiler as a translator. No, it considers the complete program as a whole, tries to convert it into zeros and ones. As there is an error in this fifth statement, it will stop compiling the rest of the commands and all and raises errors, and just that's it. That's the end of our script. But how interpreter works? Interpreter works line by line. Suppose the same instructions I have here. Now I have given to interpreter. How interpreter works? It converts it won't wait for the whole program to complete. Okay, it will process the first instruction, converts it into zeros and ones, and then executes the particular command directly without waiting for the rest of the code. Okay, as soon as it finds the first instruction, tries to convert it into zeros and ones, and if there are no errors, again there are no errors, tries to convert them. It tries to execute and give the result. Then the second instruction, again tries to convert it into zeros and ones, and then executes it if there are no errors. That means if I have an error in the 5th line, by the time that error was diagnosed or detected, I would have enjoyed the result of all the above 4 statements. I need not, okay, you understood no what I'm saying? So if there's an error in the 5th line, I can enjoy the result of the above 4 lines. Okay, if they're not dependent on the 5th line, that's a star again, that's a condition. Okay, if there are not dependent on the 5th instruction where there is an error, I can enjoy the results of all these 4 instructions. Okay, this is how a interpreter works. The working style is different. Okay, compiler considers the whole program as a bulk and it tries to convert the whole program into zeros and ones, whereas this one interpreter converts line by line. Okay, that is one difference, main difference. Then the second one about this converted version, these zeros and ones, this is called object code actually. Okay, this is whatever the instructions written by the programmer are called source code. They are language dependent, depending on Java, which language you are preferring. Java instruction, see, if you are writing the same thing in Java, it may look different. If you are writing the same in C language, it may look different. Okay, that is called source code. And whatever the converted version is there into zeros and ones, that is called object code. Source code and then object code. Now, if you are using a compiler for translation, once the program is converted into zeros and ones, they are stored permanently until and unless you delete it. That's going to get stored. So when you are trying to run the same script again for the second time, no time goes wasted in converting the instructions into zeros and ones again, because that was already converted and stored. No, whatever the source code provided is translated into zeros and ones, and that was stored actually. So for the second time, if you are executing this, or for the third time you are executing the script, it's not a new script. Okay, it was already converted version. So no time goes waste on this conversion process. But in interpreter, the instructions are converted into zeros and ones. Yes, that happens, but they are stored nowhere. They're not going to get stored. Okay, that's why even if you're running the script for the 1000th time also, it will behave like this like the same way as if it is the first time you are running the script, because it is converting and converting the script into zeros and ones, but they are not stored anywhere. They're nowhere stored. So for it is a new program only every time, each and every time. So we can say interpreted versions are a bit slower when compared to compiled languages, because every time we need to spend some extra time on this conversion process. Interpreted languages are a bit slower when compared to compiled ones. Then can we say interpreted versions are useless? Because we find advantages in compiled languages. So then can I declare interpreted languages are useless? No. There are so many features, okay, that are comfortable for the programmer. Which we can't find in compiled languages. Okay. So when we enter into this practicalities and all, we'll discuss what are the advantages. Suppose I need to take a variable. Please don't worry if any of you don't know what is a variable and all. I took a variable where I'm going to store some data like 10. This is enough in an interpreted language. Whereas if I need to do the same thing in a compiled language, I need to introduce it before introduce it to the compiler. Okay, what is an introduction? That is called, actually in technical wise, we have to call it as declaring a variable. That means I need to introduce the variable to the compiler. I need to provide its details, like the name of the variable and the data type it is going to store, the memory it requires. All these details you need to provide well in advance before you start using the variable. Okay, suppose I need a variable called a. I have to tell the compiler that I am taking a variable called a, and I'm going to store integer data into it, and I'm going to I want 2 bytes of memory for that variable. All these details you need to explain to the compiler. But here we need not worry about all these things. Just start using the variable. That's it. So There are no data types in interpreted languages? Yes, there are. Same data types that we see in other compiled languages. Integer is there, floating point is there, strings are there. There are data types, but what I am saying is you need not declare, you need not introduce. That will be taken care automatically. So when I said a equal to 10, I haven't mentioned anywhere that I'm going to use a variable called a and it requires so much of memory or it is going to store integer data. Nothing I mentioned. I just started using it. So depending on the value you took, automatically interpreter will allot the memory. It only will take care. So the programmer can get rid of all these petty issues. He can concentrate on the core logic actually. That's why even though interpreted versions are a bit slower, but they provide features which are way more convenient to the programmer compared to compiled things. Okay, so there comes a lot of all of those advantages, and I can't discuss here in detail because we haven't started properly yet. So as we are going the module wise, we can have a discussion. And is it in the hands of the programmer to choose like the compiler or interpreter? Can I choose being a Python developer? Can I choose a compiler to like run my scripts?
No,
No, it's
no, I
not in
think
our
it depends on the language you choose.
Yeah, it's the language dependent. No? So it was developed. It's not developed by me actually. It's not my language. Developed by some Guido van Rossum. Okay, so he chose interpreter. So if I am using his language, I have to follow him blindly. That's it. I can't choose interpreter or compiler to execute my scripts. Okay, we need. So if in future we are capable enough to develop our own language, then we can choose either a compiler or an interpreter. But we can so we need not worry about all these petty issues. See, if you are a Java developer now, you need to take care of all these memory issues like memory allocation and deallocation, how many variables are unused. If I have defined some variables that are not being in use, the memory gets wasted. No, I have to keep track of all those variables which are unused, and I have to manually delete them. There are functions available for it. Okay, so we need to manually delete the memory for unused variables. All these issues also have to be taken care by the programmer only. But here, okay, so can happily concentrate on the core business logic. I need not worry about all these low level issues. Okay, that's the advantage of interpreted languages. Yeah, this is how it goes actually. As of now, I just have given a brief introduction about the concepts we are going to like discuss throughout the curriculum and what are the advantages. And like upon learning the Python scripting, you can upgrade to what are all the skill set that you can upgrade to, all these things. But once we enter into the proper flow, it goes well. And like from the very scratch, I'll start. If any of you are already an expert in programming, sorry, but still you have to bear with us because that's my style of teaching. I'll start from the very scratch itself. Okay, properly we'll start whenever the like batch is schedule and all. So anybody having any doubts here?
This conference will now be recorded.